Sir, before the break, we were discussing the seeming incongruity, if you will agree that it's an incongruity between this administrative order number 1 of the President and this attitude toward the press, which he expresses often, actually. Could you explain this?
Yeah, thank you. No. Siguro, from my personal, from my own point of view, may ganun din akong tendency eh. Siguro, I understand him for what he said. Kasi halimbawa ako, I have 3 daughters, no. And there was a time when one of the suitors talagang sinabon ko, pag lock mo yan ako, papatayin kita. He even pointed a gun to his head.
Oh,
Kasi
threat
umiiyak
yun.
yung anak ko eh.
grave threat yun.
Umiiyak yung anak ko eh.
Yeah.
So sabi ko, huwag mong gagawin yan. So that's how that was a long time ago. And that's how I expressed my love for my daughter eh.
Yes.
So I couldn't overemphasize more, di ba? Naintindihan niya. And then, okay na sila. And as I said earlier, no, mas matimbang sa akin yung pinirmahan niya.
But you said we understand what you're saying, and actually we're thankful. We're thankful that the president appointed a former newsman in this position. But when you say that, look at what the president says and not what he does, shouldn't you also look at what other people would or could do because of what he says? I mean, he is the president. He commands an entire bureaucracy. He also commands an intense following. He's one of the he's the most popular president. So whatever he says does not go lightly on other people. So it's not just, it may not just be what he says.
It's how those words are taken
Yeah,
and acted upon. I mean, I just like to add to Ed's point. No, what the president says on one level happens every day, leads to verbal abuse, psychological attacks on very serious attacks on the persons. Verbally, psychologically, emotionally. Journalists, female journalists are threatened with rape on social media. Some will say, hindi, words lang yan. But no, you've been in trainings for journalists safety, and you know this is a very real attack. It can also extend to Malacanang officials or even the PSG revoking the permit of the reporters, again, just acting on the words of the president. Going to your example, I'm sorry, but you committed a crime. If you pointed a gun at someone and said, papatayin kita, that did cross a line. And in this case, wouldn't you agree that the president does cross a line and is in the danger of crossing that line whenever he calls the media the enemy?
Okay, since the task force was created, no, let's check the facts. No, we have received more than 30 cases of threats already, and we acted upon all those complaints. Yes, we have a number of shootings, including those who died and those who survived. No, but based on our data, based on our facts at hand that we have, hindi sila kwan eh. Hindi yung sinasabi na as a reaction to what the president said. The context, we need to go deeper into the context of why the persons were killed. Hindi talaga eh. Iba-iba yung context.
But you don't think it encourages impunity? I mean, it inspires people
as a matter of fact, based using our data, wala eh.
Has the task force ever talked to
There
the
may
president?
be an impression, but wala naman ni-report sa amin na gano'n eh. Inutos ni Presidente.
Yes, but Undersecretary, we're not saying that people are killing other people because the President ordered it. What we're saying is that wouldn't the President's words degrading the reputation and the believability of an institution like the press have an impact on how people would deal with that institution? We're not talking about direct order. Or direct,
but you know, this is how I look at it. Okay, wag natin pag-usapan yung AO1. Let's go to EO2. What is EO2? Executive Order number 2. Freedom of information. Diba? So, these are two very crucial, important documents na siya lang naman nag-deliver eh. Executive Order 2 is freedom of information. And then, AO1 is media protection, and we're doing everything we can to protect all media workers in the Philippines. So, in that context, I can only speak along that line. So, pero I cannot speculate na, or say na, oh yes, dahil doon, diba? Kaya may pinatay, may binarel. I don't think so because our records don't say.
Where are we now? 2 years into Duterte, is the country safe for journalists? Is it safer for journalists? Yes. What do your numbers tell you?
No, it's in fact we've counted more other kinds of attacks and threats. Okay, so in terms of the killings, there are 12 during the Duterte regime. That kind of puts him on a high level. Now, because it's only 3 years, there's no reason to we cannot compare with previous administrations that are already finished counts, right? So, but the thing that has caught our attention has been the 86 other kinds of threats and attacks, meaning digital threats, assaults, attempted slays. There are seven attempted slays. So if they had been more competent killers, we would have had a higher number of killings, right? The kind of barring from coverage, verbal assaults, cuss words, etc. There are more reporting. It may be that there are more reporting now because they feel a greater sense of threat, a greater sense of danger. I don't know, but we had not counted as many before. The other thing that is noted is that indeed there are state agents involved in many of these attacks and threats, that they are elected officials or people in the law enforcement agencies that have taken these liberties basically in treating journalists when they make them uncomfortable or if the presence is.
What do you say to officials? In this case, Yusek Egco, we had this discussion earlier when he says that, look, we know how the president speaks. Ultimately, these are just words. Look at his actions, creating task forces against impunity, precisely to protect the journalists. And just take the words as, as many spokespersons have said this, it's hyperbole, masanay na kayo. I mean, what do you say to that?
I believe that the president's animosity and hostility is maybe contagious for many of those who hold power. And the fact that he has said he will defend people who are in the police for certain crimes, etc., that also sends a signal about the latitude that these people will give themselves in terms of dealing with the press. I think his animosity is a critical issue in the assessment of risk and threats to journalists, because it is something that can have a ripple effect. One, the big number of different kinds of assaults and threats, I think, is part of that argument that people can feel that they can be insulting, that they can put somebody in an embarrassing position or just prevent him from working as a journalist, especially in the local areas. So the issue that we should just dismiss it because he has created PTForMS, let me point this out. How many journalists out in the remote areas are going to feel free to approach PTForMS if they feel that the president and perhaps law enforcement agencies feel that they can be hateful towards journalists and broadcasters and members of the media, especially in areas where these are not as powerfully projected as these are in Metro Manila. So how many journalists are going to say, I'm going to work with PTForMS? I'm going to bring it out there. I think a question is, how many cases have been brought to court because of PTForMS action?